gone through, and it had gone through once on one tech company in one country, there's a chance for lots of other countries to ask for the same and to ask that of other tech companies. And suddenly you don't really have an encryption anymore. We've all got the keys to all the locks.
We'll get back to your video shortly, but first, many of you right now will be watching the show on your phone, tablet or laptop, completely unaware that this very second someone could be accessing your device and stealing your data. Using the internet without private internet access, VPN, is like letting Facebook post your diary. Your friends and family can read all your dirty secrets. A virtual private network, or VPN for short, is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. It shields your digital life from those eyes who are looking to exploit your private information. Whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network at airports, coffee shops, friends' houses, or even at your own home, your data is at risk of being stolen. Your device is transmitting a great amount of information out into the open, which can be viewed by various different entities before reaching the intended website, such as your ISP, government censors, advertising companies, and more. Hackers on the same network can easily steal your personal data. With PIA, you're protected. But there's more. With PIA, you can access all your usual streaming services, including Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+, even if you're outside your own region. All you need to do is open the app, select a server from 91 countries, and just like that, you're digitally there. And it's not just for fun. With recent legislation, more and more content is being restricted. PIA allows you to access the content and news that you want to watch. And with one PIA subscription, you can protect an unlimited number of devices, so that's the whole family covered. Follow the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen now to receive a massive 86% discount, making it just £1.57 per month. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and to top it off, you'll receive 4 additional months for free. Head to piavpn.com now and take control of your digital life.
Charlotte Wilson, Head of Enterprise Business at Checkpoint. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
The UK will no longer be pursuing a backdoor into Apple's iCloud encryption service, according to US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Why was Britain pursuing this encryption backdoor in the first place? Because it seems a little bit of a bad idea.
So for anybody that works in security, this probably makes you slightly flinch at the idea. But just to give a bit of history, in 2016, the UK saw the introduction of something called the Investigatory Powers Act. So that gave provision for something called a technical capability notice. Now, in layman's terms, that just means that authorities in the UK could go and compel a tech firm to provide access to encrypted data or information it had. Now, the reason for that was to look for organised crime or activities like terrorism, child abuse, things that were real concerns. But it basically also means that you could have access to information and you know, that could also be exploitative. So in 2025, roll forward from 2016, there was a story that was leaked that the UK government was issuing one of these TCNs, or this technical capability notices, to Apple and asking them to give a backdoor to something called its Advanced Data Protection Service. So in response, basically Apple said no, and they withdrew the ADP, or the Advanced Data Protection Service.
And why? To my understanding, the American government got involved in this. It wasn't just Apple saying no, thank you, but Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, and I think JD Vance all sort of
That's correct,
piling in, saying this is not a good idea. We don't want to be doing this.
Yeah.
Why was this such a sticking point for America and not just Apple?
So if you are in America and somebody has an entrance into data that's encrypted around, it could actually talk about citizen data, you know, so it could be sovereign data, it could be citizen data for the US citizens. It also kind of clashes with another act called the Cloud Act, which protects sovereignty of data. and cross-border access to data. So it would directly compromise the act that is there to potentially protect people in different nations and in different sovereign states. So it's a little bit unworkable, but if you're the US, that's one thing, I suppose. And then finally, it could mean that other Western democracies ask for the same. So suddenly all the tech companies might have to give backdoors. And obviously, if you're an American government, you might want to protect your citizens. You probably don't really want that.
If this demand had gone through, aside from, I suppose, the risks of creating a backdoor with which bad actors could get through as well, what would be the risks of the precedent that this would set for global data privacy?
So I think that's where people in cybersecurity world start to get more nervous about had this have gone through. I think it would have been quite troubling. It'd be the first time ever a Western democracy has forced a tech giant to completely redesign itself, so redesign its architecture and its global encryption. Because let's be honest, they haven't designed it so this bit's for the UK and this bit's for France and this bit's for Germany. That's not really how they've architected it, quite possibly. So they'd have to redesign everything in the first place. But secondly, all the other Western democracies might ask for the same, or any country might demand the same. And it just is a potentially dangerous idea. If I allow a door, the door doesn't know it's letting in goodies or baddies. So if there is a door, it could be used for great purposes of controlling crime and stopping crime from taking root. But it could also be really helpful for hackers or criminals or other people that also want that information for different reasons. So if it had gone through, and it had gone through once on one tech company in one country, there's a chance for lots of other countries to ask for the same, and to ask that of other tech companies, and suddenly you don't really have an encryption anymore. We've all got the keys to all the locks.
So what do you think of this outcome in terms? Some people will be thinking of this as another tech company essentially overruling the rules of a government, of a nation. How does this outcome add to that precedent that people are kind of seeing happening? Another example would be US and UK copyright for AI scraping, for example.
Yeah, so it's the problem is, ultimately, it is a win for the tech company. And I understand how people feel, and sometimes we can all feel this way. We can all feel like the really large, highly moneyed tech companies win every time and they're above the law. But the reality is, in this case, they had to win it, really. It shows how sort of national laws can't massively apply to international or global platforms. It's just not workable. So what's needed in one country and one country's rules won't be the same as another company or country, sorry. So you can sort of see that it wasn't really workable in the first place. It's a bit of if you understand technology, you understand it's maybe architected in a way that's a global platform, then a national ruling couldn't really take place on that global platform without major problems. And so I have a lot of sympathy, because there are times we all feel like it would be better if actually the tech giants would just give information to law enforcement and help us stop crime. But if we do that, we then cause a deeper problem, which is making all of us actually unsafe. Plus, if you're Apple, frankly, your brand is about giving privacy and giving security to the people that use their platforms. Immediately, they break their brand. I mean, their brand promise is broken, isn't it? If I can immediately give access to other people, then what I've stood for as a company to build my company, I can no longer adhere to. So I think I can't see how it would have ever been workable. I think quietly stepping away from the request in the first place was probably the best thing to do.
I mean, there's been another incident in the UK where they requested age verification, which I believe is now hitting some other countries as well. And a very expected reaction from the public was to use VPNs to essentially circumvent this. Is this more speaking to a lack of awareness of how technology works and the reactions from the community, and even those that will just look up on Google or wherever else, just how do I get around this new restriction?
Yeah, so I'm the mother of children, and obviously was one myself. And children are really good at getting around challenges, problems. You tell them it's a bedtime at a certain time, they find every way not to have a bedtime at a certain time. And as children grow up, they're really savvy with technology. Younger people are tech native. They use it every day. They have never known a different world, and they're really good at it. And so I think it maybe speaks to not understanding how clever and how resilient younger people can be, in particular, if they want to get access to something. So I'm not sure that the current ideas are going to be workable. I think younger people are smarter than that and know how to get around things. I know young people, for example, use VPNs to pretend they're in a different country so they can get access to different streaming services. And that's been going on for years. So I'm not sure enforcing age verification is going to work. Or some of the commentary around VPNs is particularly workable. I just think children are probably smarter than that. Also, if you look at the National Crime Agency, they talk about the Computer Misuse Act, and there's a worrying trend of younger people being able to break that Misuse Act quite commonly, and the age is going down. So we're seeing younger, more tech savvy people getting into using technology in ways that not only break what we want as rules, but also in some cases we're seeing them more enter into the hacking community as well. So I think we may be underestimating the full capabilities and power of some of the technically savvy, technically native individuals concerned.
Shifting back to the backdoor request from the UK to Apple, what is the next step? Because to my understanding, the UK's Investigatory Power Act still allows a future UK government, or even this UK government, to go to a tech company and make essentially the same request. But I assume they'll obviously adjust it slightly. So presumably they'll be looking at this essentially defeat and thinking, where can we take this next? Where do you think that might go, and what do you think the response might be from the tech community and industry?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I can't profess to have all the answers, and I think there's still an active legal case, so I can't talk to that. But I do think there needs to be better partnership with government and tech firms generally, because we have seen in the UK some really troubling things. I think the grooming gangs is one thing. But you can see organised crime groups. We do see those things, and I have a lot of sympathy for law enforcement, because a win for a tech giant and for the technical and cybersecurity community is great, but a loss for law enforcement is not good. And I think they've got a very difficult job, and tracking, finding information, piecing it together to be able to take down large criminal gangs is extremely difficult. So I do think there needs to be better partnerships between technology companies and law enforcement and other national security. I'm not sure how well that happens today. I think there's probably greater room. I also think there needs to be routes for people, and especially, as I was saying, younger children, as they start to come up through into the workforce. I think we need to find better routes for younger people to get into. Maybe government is one way, maybe law enforcement, but routes for deep-rooted technical understanding. I think that partnership could work better. Certainly in Checkpoint, we bring in a lot of younger people. We go and do a lot of work with schools and universities. I know a lot of the technical companies do, a lot of cyber companies do the same, but I'm not sure there's always enough jobs or enough routes in. So I think we could do a better job of bringing together technology companies and government bodies and start to educate. So we ask better informed questions, but we also find a way to share information that is important, that could be, dangerous activities being identified earlier.
I know the first question most people ask is, what about AI in any conversation on tech? But does AI have a place potentially in monitoring encrypted data services like Apple's iCloud, and then in its sort of black box nature, then sending out things through a one-way door that it can then say, I've flagged this user and this user and this user because of this criteria of filtration, maybe not the right word, but of identification of bad actors.
So you've just opened up like the world's biggest box there. AI is a subject I'm passionate about, largely from an inclusion perspective. So I do a lot of work around AI, looking at what is it based on. The AI is basically a way for you to get to answers quickly by using large pools of data that you wouldn't humanly be able to consume, so you get a better outcome. And so, yes, I think it can be an ingredient that could find me troubling trends. If this is present and these 5 other things are present, we know that's probably bad activity. I definitely think AI has a place to play there. My concerns with AI have always been that it's often got a very deep inherent bias. And so I think AI is brilliant, but I worry that we don't always have the governance checks that we need. I think I read a report very recently about outcomes for elderly people, for example, in social care. And the description for the male or the men was far worse in terms of they were much more disabled or unable and needed help. Whereas the women or the females that were identified that had exactly the same sort of symptoms or concerns were self-resilient and didn't need help. So we were making policy decisions and policy recommendations based on a biased data set that gave a biased outcome, and therefore actually unfairly treated one group versus another based on gender. They're some of the outcomes that we're starting to see from AI. So I think AI absolutely has a place. We have to use it. But I think governance has got a bit weak and we haven't legislated. And without those things, that would be my worry, there might be concerns there that I can't yet see, that we only know when they come out. But I definitely think with a defined group of data, you can get to good outcomes, notwithstanding other concerns around security and AI and people poisoning the well, so to speak, on the data itself.
So then, rather than predicting what might happen next, what would your recommendation be for a government looking to establish better security for its citizens, and also for a tech company that's not wanting to protect people that would be misusing its services?
At this moment in time, what I would really recommend is that we start building better apprenticeships, and we start building those technical relationships. So maybe we start funding into the tech firms, or we start building a way for tech firms to come into government and advise better, so that the questions that we ask of the tech firms are A, workable, and B, likely to happen. I think just understanding how they're architecting their platforms might inform the kind of questions or the kind of legislation we put in place. But to do that, we need to bring that industry really close into the government circles to understand what kind of information is needed. I also think, you posed the question about AI, and I get very excited because there's so many angles to it. It's a really interesting area. But genuinely, I think a think tank with multiple members of the side of cybersecurity and tech firms more broadly actually give them the problems that some of our law enforcements face, because they will come up with brilliant and innovative solutions. I don't know how much we do that, so it could be happening and I just don't know. But that kind of thing, I feel there's a gap there, and we need the help. As the UK, we want the help. I think that people would be willing.